Welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast brought to you by Mastery Partners, where our mission is to equip business owners like you to maximize your business value and achieve the exit of your dreams, whatever that means to you. With insights gained from over 100 business transactions, we share real-world strategies, lessons, and expert advice to help you build long-term, sustainable value in your business. Each episode is hosted by one of our Mastery certified partners. They're seasoned experts who've helped countless business owners navigate the complexities of growth, scaling, and building value. They bring first-hand experience, actionable insights, and a passion for helping you build a business that thrives. So let's dive in.
Well, hello, this is Dave Casey, and welcome to the Maximize Business Value podcast. This is part of a series of podcasts for business leaders who are serious about building long-term sustainable value in their business. Today, I'm excited to welcome back to the podcast, and he's actually hosted it a bunch of times too, Terry Chevalier, one of our Mastery partners. Terry, welcome.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Dave. It's good to be back. Good to see you.
Yeah. So this one, this will be fun because this is something we do, I think, innately, but it's important, I think, to do it very deliberately. We're going to talk about strategic planning. So with your background, I think you're one of the best at this particular aspect of business. So let me just throw it open to you. How do you define strategic planning, and why do you think it's important?
Well, it's a great question. I mean, I haven't got a single definition of a strategic plan, but what I will say is a strategic planning or strategic plan is not a single one and done point in time. A strategic planning is a process, and it's a process that is designed to translate your long-term aspirations into achievable goals, but more importantly, to get it there. So if you just focus on, I think as an industry, and I've kind of said this before, I came from out of big consulting. I think big consulting does a great job of coming up with really great plans. But unfortunately, the vast majority of them never get executed. And in fact, the statistics are pretty bad about it. There was a Harvard Business case study. It was talking about transformative projects in business. 80% of them fail.
Wow.
I think other things.
Very high number.
Yeah, it is. It's almost the same thing as like when you think about an exit for a business owner is a transformative project. And we know that there's only 17% of those that get across.
Yeah.
So the funny thing is that whether you are trying to transform and exit the business or just simply transform your business, the statistics are not in your favor. And so that's really just, it's absolutely a passion of mine, is how do we fix that problem? How do we fix that gap?
Yeah.
How do you take what you invest, that time, effort, money, aspirations, and then actually achieve it?
So, if I'm trying to think of it from the aspect or the perspective of a small business owner. If they understand those statistics, I think the initial thing would be, well, why even bother then if I'm only, the chances are it's only going to be 20% that it's going to work or it's going to be effective.
Right, right. Yeah. And obviously that would be the first thing, but then you say, okay, well, I think as Yogi Berra says, if you don't have a plan, any path's going to get you there.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
and so you've got to have a direction, because if you don't have direction, if you don't have a clarification of like what that goal is, how do you make day-to-day decisions? How do you know this moves me in the direction, this does not move me in the direction? Because it's the power is not in deciding what you do, it's deciding what you don't do, so that you have capacity to go do those things that matter.
And you've got, and particularly in small, medium-sized businesses, you've got very limited resources to deploy.
Absolutely.
So you've got to make sure you don't make mistakes there, that you spend in the right areas, you spend time in the right areas, you hire in the right areas.
Absolutely.
All that comes into play.
And if I can build on that just to kind of illustrate it, and this is more a little bit almost in succession planning, but that's an example of it. If you take a corporation and say that corporation has 10,000 people in it and one person leaves, not counting the CEO,
Yeah.
but just the average employee leaves. Think about the impact on that organization.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a small business owner and you have 10 to 50 people and one person leaves, what's the impact on your organization?
Obviously,
It's
yeah,
proportionally, it's magnitudes higher.
yeah, yeah,
And so to your point, it's actually counterintuitive, but the smaller you are, the more critical your decisions are towards your longevity.
yeah, yeah.
It's
So
harder with
in strategic planning, and I've done some of that. I mean, when I had my company, we certainly had very near term, medium term, long term planning.
hmm
Um, but the struggle was, I think, how do you divide up chew up this elephant?
Yes.
Because we
Yes.
would set this, okay, we know what our 5-year plan is, but it was really hard to get to that 90-day plan from that 5-year plan.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I see that all the time. And I think part of the challenge is when folks do let's call it the 5-year plan or the 10-year, you're building off of, Jim Collins is Good to Great and talks about the
Yep.
concept of a BHAG, a big, hairy, audacious
Yeah.
goal.
This spills over into EOS.
And
It's
it does. It
EOS
spills
framework
into
uses that
EOS
too.
frameworks,
Yep.
Vision Traction Organizer.
Yep.
Um, and let me kind of bifurcate because if I do something like EOS has a really good tool, the Vision Traction Organizer, it's like sort of like a business plan on a page. If you are very small, that is actually a very effective way to get started because it's just getting you in a direction. You're not overly thinking too much about that longer term. You're just trying to get in that direction. And so it leads you into that sort of 90-day cycle and it works really well. The challenge I always found is as you get bigger, suddenly that longer term direction is more important because the moves you make are going to take years to show. You
Yeah.
can't make the wrong investments. And so what I'll do a lot of times is work with folks to what is that longer term direction? And it's got to be informed with data. You
Mm.
can't just go with my gut. We're good at X,
Yeah.
whatever X is. Prove it, show it. Are your competitors doing it? So that you can carve out what we call, the long-term sustainable differentiated advantage and sort of the Michael Porter uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
idea. So once I've identified that piece, the thing is, if I really believe that, it shouldn't change year to year. So in subsequent years, I'm not revisiting that. I'm just validating it's still true.
Yeah.
Then I focus my time and say, okay, if I'm going to get there, and I like to use the analogy of a journey. When you think about the idea of like the rest stop or a waypoint,
Yeah.
I've got to figure out what's the next waypoint. The next waypoint could be the next year, it could be the next 2 years. But at the end of that waypoint, I've got to do something. I've
Yep.
got to make some changes. So first figure out what is the immediate next waypoint. It could be the next year, next 2 years, whatever. Then I break that down into certain pieces that I've got to get done that could take multiple years. That then forms the basis for my annual goals. And so my annual goals then tie back to that to get me to that point. Once I know my annual goals, that's where the EOS framework comes in really good. And I go back to a 90-day
Yep.
execution plan. And so it's really about get that long-term backward plan, but don't each year come back and redo the whole
Yeah.
thing.
And that's such a prevalent thing in small businesses, and I think it is a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes because small businesses will pride themselves, we're going to succeed because we're nimble and we can run circles around these big guys that can't change course very fast. We can change course like crazy. And they think that that's kind of a goal. Okay, yeah, we last year we were focused on this. This year we're going to do something good because it's nimble, and sometimes that's to a fault. So
Yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, because I mean, if you're moving the goalposts every year, you're never getting good at it.
yeah,
And in order to create value, you've got to be good and you've got to be better than everybody else. And it's got to be transferable value. As we talk about mastery,
yeah,
I have to have processes, procedures. People have to know how to do it. It's my way of doing things. I've got things that back it up. It's intellectually protected, patents or whatever else it may be, contractual language. Everything is built around that so that now somebody can come in and buy that from me. And now they have something very special
yeah,
they
yeah.
can take forward.
Well, and I think if they've done the time to do the strategic planning, even a 5 or 10 year goal, and let's say they're 2 or 3 years into that, if they can show their progress to that goal, To
Yeah.
me, that adds tremendous value to the company. That yes, this is a company that's got focus and they're executing and they're moving forward. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great point. And I think, when we go in and talk to, our clients, as you know, I mean, we'll ask questions about this.
Yeah.
We'll try to understand. And, have you done market research? Have you proven where you are? Have you got, people love it if you can say, hey, we set goals and we achieve them,
Yep.
versus people who say we set goals and we kind of get there.
Yeah.
Which one's more valuable? This is not a hard question.
Or they say, our goal for 2025 is this. Well, what was 2024's goal? Well, that was the blue widgets, and we're way past that, So it's
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Exactly.
it's kind of like, okay, it's Dory, it's the next shiny object, right? So how does a small business that wants to do this, they want to be good,
Hmm.
they want to be strategic, if that's the right word.
Yeah.
How do they act like a big guy? How do they actually
Sure.
play
Sure.
in this pool?
Well, it's a great, and I'll describe it from a couple of different angles. One from just the process itself, and you have to realize you have to adapt processes down to fit you. But I think the second thing is sort of from the thinking and the infrastructure that you need to do. So as I think about the process, and I used to run strategic planning process for Fortune 50 companies,
Wow.
and it
That's
is
why
a
you're such a good
year.
mastery partner.
Thank you for that. It is why it takes a year, and it truly takes a village, because when you're that big, you are first surveying the broader trends that are affecting you. You're trying to figure out what's affecting us, what could affect us.
Yep.
From that, you're developing a set of plans. You're trying to assess those plans, and then you're bringing those forward. And then you're a public company, and you've got to bring those things to the board, and the board's got to approve it. And then you got to take that and you got to translate it into a budget, and then that. Small company doesn't have any of that.
No.
Um, and so but there are elements of that you want to pick up. The idea of what's happening around me, um, not just what's happening to me, but what's happening around me. What are the broader trends in my area, in my industry?
Hmm.
One as a simple example is, if you have a market, a lot of people love to do customer surveys, and we want you to do customer surveys. Do you ever do a market survey? Talk not just to your customers, but to your competitors' customers, and figure out why they chose them, why they didn't choose you. What are the things that are setting you apart? So you want to do that kind of work. Then you want to say, okay, where's the opportunity for me?
Hmm.
And put some numbers around it. A lot of people like to say, hey, I think, as I said, I'm nimble. And so this nimble, and I'm like, okay, well, how does nimble translate to value? What are
Yeah.
you going to be nimble at? What are you going to invest in? What are you going to get as a result from it? Think about ROI. This is one of the things we always teach business owners. Think in terms of ROI.
Yep.
And so then once you do that, then you put in plan, whether you're using EOS or some other form, scaling up, the
Yep.
12-week year, whatever your chosen flavor is, to implement that. So I think that's one element, and just realize that this is a process. That means you're always kind of reviewing
Yep.
it, and that's why I think EOS is strong. The second thing you have to do, though, is you have to begin to elevate yourself and your team. And this is where sort of investing in your team, investing in, leadership coaching, strategic thinking. There's
Yep.
all kinds of great facilitators and learning, because what you want to do is figure out paths to take your team from the way they think to that higher level. Give you an example. I was literally doing a strategic planning session this week. I had a team that was about 10 people. I had, a few senior executives. I had sort of their managers, and then the line supervisors. And you could tell in the room who was the line supervisor versus the managers, because the questions they asked.
Yeah.
They were in the weeds. They were thinking about, well, how's
Yeah.
this going to, how's
How
that
does
going
this
to be?
affect our production line?
Exactly. Whereas the people who are above are saying, well, no, wait, we have to do this.
Yeah.
We have to figure out a way to do this because that's the right path for the company.
I remember with my company, I won't say I was smart, but I was at least aware. So we were in the technology space and we deployed technology. So we were not a manufacturer. We didn't have engineers designing stuff, but we aligned ourselves with companies that did all that. So our supplier companies were like Cisco, Juniper,
Mhm.
Microsoft, Dell, I mean, EMC, big companies in the IT space. And what was interesting, the companies are always, I would say, years ahead of the market. So they've got thousands of engineers in the back room developing products that won't be deployed for 3 to 5 years, right? And some of that's by design because they're reaping rewards or profits from their current product line. They're not going to supplant it too early with a follow-on product. Uh, so you got to have a lifespan of the product. And in the technology world, it's hard to extend a lifespan. But in terms of adoption by the market, it was very predictable. So when a new product or a new type of product or service came out, it was always the West Coast first because these companies were all mostly based on the West Coast. Okay, so they would be deployed over in California, Washington, Oregon, up and down the West Coast first. Then they would be on the East Coast. So it'd be New York, Boston, Philadelphia, up and down the East Coast, and then finally Middle America. And it would be like, you know, it's amazing. Just stuff like even the use of cell phones in business, right? It was
Mhm.
that far back. Uh, West Coast guys were all using Blackberries long before they showed up in Dallas, Fort Worth, or in Oklahoma. And even Oklahoma is a year or two behind Dallas, Fort Worth. So we actually knew where the market was going. And so we could prepare for that. And most of our competitors were like, I'm running my business. They did not look at
Wow.
even minor things like that. And you've been in the telecom space a long time, and we've definitely saw it in telecom as well.
Yeah. No, I think that's a wonderful example. And it just goes to show you, you as a business owner have intimate knowledge of your industry, how your vendors work,
Hmm.
and suppliers, technology trends, things like that. And if you are paying attention to what's happening around you, not just to you and what's going on in the business, you can see opportunities. You can
Yeah.
see headwinds and tailwinds coming your way.
Yep.
If you can identify those, if it's a headwind, you can figure out a way around it, mitigate it,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
using a nautical term, tack into it, and still get some,
You bet.
you know, still
Pretty
get
much
something
stay
out
the
of it. But
course. You
tailwind,
just,
how do I supercharge this?
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Another example that we saw, the same thing was the method of distribution. So when we started our company, we were a stocking distributor. We were selling
mm,
to the end user organizations, but we had inventory in our premises. So we were managed and somewhat managed the vendors. So if we were dealing with Cisco, they're a public company, so they're a slave to those quarterly numbers you have to hit. We knew that a great time to negotiate with them was toward the end of the quarter for price concessions. We'll take another extra $100,000 of that stuff if you give us 5 more points, that
yeah.
kind of thing. And then that translated to the end of their fiscal year, which was offset from ours. We were on a calendar year. They ended it at the 30th of June. So we really got hard at negotiating in June because that
Oh
was not
yeah.
only their quarter end, it's their year end. And we knew every single one of our suppliers when their quarter end, when their year end was. We also knew how well they were doing quarter to date. Because
Yeah.
I would get
Yeah.
calls from industry stock analysts, and they'd ask us, how's
Mhm.
how's business, how things going. And in turn, I would ask them, what are you hearing? Because
Mhm.
they've talked to 20 guys like me across the country.
Right.
And they'll
Right.
say,
Yeah.
well, East Coast a little soft, West Coast is booming, here's what's happening in Chicago. And so I got some really good insight, all of that intelligence, which helped us do our planning. And some of that was short term, but some of that was long term. Like when the
Yeah.
industry shifted from us holding inventory to big distribution companies like Tech Data and Maricel, there were all these big IT distribution companies that were holding all the inventory, and then we bought out of their inventory. So the shift was we weren't issuing POs to the manufacturer anymore. We're issuing to their two-tier distributors. We saw that coming very early on. We shifted to that model way before anybody else did. So we got out of the inventory business,
Hmm.
which was
Hmm.
great, and it doesn't take a lot sometimes to do that thinking or seeing around corners.
Right.
You just
Right.
have to do it a little better than the next guy. So,
Well, it's an interesting point, David. So I want to ask the question back to you because what you're articulating is, I mean, you were taking a very strategic mindset to your business.
yeah.
Where did you learn that? And for business owners that are out there, what advice would you have for them on how to develop that strategic mindset?
Thank you for tuning in to the Maximize Business Value podcast. This episode is the first of a 2-part release. Part 2 will be posted next week.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Maximize Business Value podcast. I hope today's conversation sparked new ideas on how you can continue driving value in your business. But remember, it's not just about listening. It's about taking massive action. Visit our website, masterypartners.com, for more resources. Grab a copy of any of the books in the Maximize Business Value series on Amazon or via the links below. And don't hesitate to reach out if you want to know how to apply these concepts to your business. So until next time, I'm Tom Bronson, reminding you to relentlessly execute while you maximize business value.